Okay, so I'm going to start by saying this is the August 9th regular meeting of the Advisory Committee on Sustainability. We, at this point, are short one member for a quorum, although we're waiting for a fourth person to be able to log into the virtual meeting. And in the meantime, we will skip things like public comment and approval of minutes, but there are a few matters that I think we can update each other on with or without a quorum, just to keep our to-do list going. Carolyn, is that your understanding as past chair that we can move ahead with discussion?
We can still have a discussion. We can't approve minutes or vote on anything.
Okay, super duper. All right. Why don't we just start at the agenda, which at moving past approving minutes to the sidewalk sale, which happened right after our last meeting. I was away, I didn't get there. I saw some follow-up pictures and things like that, but is there any further follow-up or any feedback from doing it that you'd like to share with the committee, Carolyn, before we move on to our bigger projects?
Cliff volunteered there, as well as me, Amanda, and Christine. Dan was not able to find the table either day, I don't believe. But I think it was worthwhile. I think it was a nice collaboration with Whole Foods. Most people didn't want to stop and talk about the food scrap program, or have recycling questions, because I always asked them if they had like general recycling questions. I think the sidewalk sales, people are generally shopping and looking for, picking up free bags and water bottles and snacks in the case of Whole Foods. However, I did have a couple of conversations with people, and they were really great conversations. There was one person who had relocated from California and was unaware of our program. She has been in Darien for a little bit over a year and just hasn't come upon our program. And I explained the whole thing, and she thanked me profusely. I gave her a postcard. I allowed her to. She scanned the hi Linda, the web, the site map for the recycling center. And that was really good. And there were a few people like that. So I would say that was good. There were also people from other towns who obviously they're not interested in our food scrap program, but I was able to direct them how to get information in their respective towns. So all in all, I think it was nice. But I wouldn't say a ton of at least in the how many 5 hours that I was there over the course of 2 days, 5 or 6 hours. But it was good. I'm Cliff. I don't know if you want to talk about your experience.
My experience was sounds like identical to yours, but I think my conclusion would be that this is not time well spent. To spend 5 hours in your case, mine was more like 2.5, I think, and talk to 5 people in a meaningful way. It's just not efficient, it seems to me. We'd be much better off if we could address large groups.
Yeah. But in the days that I was there, the weather was nice. I didn't mind sitting out. I didn't mind spending my time. It wasn't as though if I hadn't been there, I would have been talking to large groups of people. So I feel like even those few people that I talked to was worthwhile, but I see your point.
Thank you for that point. Because I think, we did have 4 of our volunteers donate time to present information about a program that the town offers that we find out is maybe in that setting isn't top of mind, yet there are other people for whom that's a community forum in which they can learn something they didn't know. So I can argue both ways the value of doing that kind of event, but what I hear loud and clear is the communication strategy to to continue to expand this program, especially given the number of new people in the community, which the people that I've spoken to that are new that don't know about it are like, wow, that's great. So I see an opportunity to go back to, our own thinking caps, go to our communications person, whose name I always forget,
Marley.
Marley, see if through the town there are other things that we might be able to do that would get the message out. And one of them is their vehicles of messaging. And I agree, you're right, possibly finding, once a month, one of us is speaking to some group in the community, that would be a better use of 2 hours of time for one people to talk to 20 people than 5 people talking to 5 people. So would we kind of agree, and we can, when we get down to expand food scraps recycling, like an action plan for the fall might be to find 3 groups to meet with and talk to Marley, like there could be 3 or 4 things that we could try to do to spread the word about the program. Does that make sense, Cliff?
It makes sense to me, and I would add, since Carolyn, you're talking about newcomers to town in particular, that we should probably circle back. I know we did this about 3 years ago, and make sure that newcomers, when they are welcoming people to town, include some information about what we do.
Yeah, I believe that they do get a packet, and they do get one of our postcards. I gave a couple stacks of postcards to Leslie, and she's the one who puts together those bags. So, but maybe getting,
who knows if they still have those postcards, if there's been a lot of turnover in town.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'll have to check with her. The other thing I was thinking is if we could get a list of names and maybe, I don't know, phone numbers, addresses, emails for the newcomers, we could also follow up and say, did you get the postcard about the food scrap program? That might be one way to do it. I know that we had also
do have, Carolyn, the money that's in the NIP program that is meant to be used towards reducing food waste, and maybe there would be a way to create something really written to people that move into town that could be, hand delivered or mail delivered or something, or maybe provided in the realtors' offices as well, about one of the cool things in town. So if we had printing costs or whatever, we may have some funds that we could use towards that aren't large or require grant requests or anything of that nature. So, okay, let's kind of move on, and then we can come back to that because Tony's here. I want to talk about the EV fleets and some information on leaf blowers as well. But we can circle back to some possible to-dos on food scraps. How's that? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Do we have any stats from the transfer station this year? I know you last year you were getting those regularly. Do we know what those are now? Are you still receiving that information?
We don't have the statistics on the all of the materials that go through the transfer station. Darren does that report more towards the end of the summer, the one that he has to submit to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. However, Cindy Wilson in Ed's office monthly does send me the food scrap. So I can tell you what the food scrap is. And for the last month, it was 3.8 tons. And if you just want to know what that is relative to other months, I would say it's over the course of the past few years that it's been tracked, it's a little bit higher than the last July's. And then I also have the statistics for fiscal year 23, which ended June 30th, 2023. And in that fiscal year, we diverted 42.2 tons, which was a little bit higher than the prior year, which was 39.07, and not quite as high as 2020. 2020 was a little bit of an anomaly because of everything that was going on and people were home and that kind of thing. But I mean, I think it doesn't show that we've been growing by leaps and bounds, but it still shows that we're just eking forward ever so slightly. So our work is cut out.
Basically 42 tons of waste were removed from our municipal waste stream.
Yeah.
And we know that there is a cost per ton. Obviously, there are costs with curbside compost, but and that's based on what we know is maybe around maybe 500 users. We know how many bins we've given out, things like that. That seems like if you guesstimated the number of users, that's an interesting. You might be able to extrapolate that out. We might be able to extrapolate it out when we see the year-end report that Darren does. It'll be interesting because I'd seen that last year. You could start to track the numbers together to continue this case if, in fact, we're looking to grow this program. I think that's great. Over 42 tons. That's on a voluntary program that you have to pay to go into the transfer station to use. And I think it speaks to the potential if we were to be able to make this a little more mainstream. So maybe next month we'll have Darren's report, which shows the tonnage to city carding versus, so we'll have, and then the breakdown of that, right? That long, the big report, the big massive one-page spreadsheet.
Yeah, the one that shows how much scrap metal and how much MSW and so on and so forth.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Before we move on, I think we're going to skip the swap shop, but we should say hello to Amanda. How are you? I haven't seen you in a little while. And we just talked about recapping the sidewalk sale. Carolyn and Cliff both talked about that they didn't meet a lot of people. They had a couple of impactful conversations. Cliff felt it was a bit of, a lot of volunteer hours for a small number of contacts, and that speaking to larger groups would be effective, from our committee point of view. Yet Carolyn can say that the few people that she did talk to, they will take it on and maybe they'll tell a few of their friends. Do you have any additional kind of feedback from that sidewalk sale event and being out there downtown?
Yeah, I'll say I found people were either super into it and probably already doing it or had done it. I had a couple people say they ended up having like mice and bugs, so they discontinued it, but they appreciated the venture, and like people who were doing it would stop and want to talk forever about how great it was. And then I talked to people who were like opposed to it, and I was surprised. Not a lot of middle ground, but there was definitely a fair amount of people that were opposed, which was shocking to me.
Did they say why?
Well, as you'd expect, they didn't have a good reason. There's just something off-putting about taking out scraps. It's like, oh, those people, right? Oh, the scraps. And it was comments like, one was like, oh, I don't really, oh, that sounds like a lot of work for not a lot of benefit. And so then I kind of talked about the benefit of it and why it is more beneficial. Like the numbers you were just giving, I didn't have those numbers per se, and I didn't get into numbers, but I talked about how when we put it in the garbage, I always focus on when we put it in the garbage, it costs more to remove it. It doesn't allow us to use it as the resource it could be, creating, like the rich dirt. And there's a third one I always go into. Maybe those are kind of the two big ones. But it's almost like they don't buy it or they don't believe it. Oh, well, that sounds like a lot of work. And then the other thing I ran into is a fair amount of people outsource the garbage, so that's not their problem. And I've said this before, but I think where the big bang is with the kids, because the kids almost would spend more time talking to me about it than the adults would. And that kind of brings me to I think, and I don't know what you guys did for the table, if it changed every time a different one of us came, but I think if we're going to do tables, we should make them kind of dynamic. And really what I ended up doing I had like, I think 2 shifts. One shift I had well, we always had the compost thing. One, though, I made it into a recycling because everyone came by and had garbage in their hand. And I'm the garbage queen here. So I started making that a dump zone for them to put their
Oh,
garbage.
that's
And then while the
good.
kids were playing in the, or like putting their garbage in there, and then they'd look, one was looking in the little 2-year-old was looking in her um, stroller for more garbage that she could put in the bin. And then I had the parents' ear to be like, here's what we know about food scrapping. And like
Yeah,
the kids,
fabulous.
got into it. And it's like, put your banana peel in this. Yeah. And I go, my kids at
That's a
home love
great
it. And then
idea.
my kids came. And so then I'm like, don't we do this at home? And my kids are like, yeah. And then they asked them a couple of questions. And so it made it like human, and like it's so darn easy. I mean, in my house, we've been doing it for years. My little 6-year-old does it. Like it is so darn easy. The kids get into it. For some reason, there's this disconnect for some adults. And like one woman was from Fairfield. She's like, oh, yeah, everybody should be doing that. Fairfield doesn't do that. And I said, actually, I think they do. And she's like, no, they don't. That's a lot of work and a lot to take on for a community. And I'm like, so
Amanda,
I
I'm going
guess
to stop you there because two PTO chairs, a custodian, a principal, and somebody else received a green. It's something called a green award, a green excellence award in Washington D.C. with big mucky mucks, and got to go to days worth of sessions yesterday in DC from one of the Fairfield schools that implemented a full food pyramid food waste reduction program. And
there you go.
so just it's happening on little ways, and I would like to come back to that in a minute about what Fairfield did, but it's some sort of a you're a green ribbon school, kind of like when Hindley has the blue ribbon thing. This
Yeah.
was for their efforts with a green activity, which I will share. I can share in the chat or an email. Was described on a recent Sustainable CT webinar. So we can maybe come
So,
back to that. What I've
yeah,
heard from you to add is that if we're going to table as both groups, we should make it interactive, dynamic, something. Having
Hey, I
younger
like that
people do it might
idea.
be really good, and maybe being prepared for a few of those objectives ahead of time, even if you don't know them intrinsically, but to have them as part of a chart or a handout or a poster or whatever isn't a bad idea either. Um, I think those are really great ideas because now you've all been at two different places talking to consumers, and there's two kinds. They or three kinds. They love it and they do it. They love it from somewhere else. They didn't know they could do it, and they don't want to do it. So I think we have to work on the love it people,
right.
and make
But I
sure they
think
have the
even though,
resources.
and I thought about it after my first session or whatever hour, and it's like, even if some of those people who are so gung ho and they wanted to talk about it, I bet we could ask their permission, get them to give a clip of why they do it, and then we could put that on our social media. So like when people are
That's great.
saying, oh, this is fantastic. Hey, can I get a video of you saying that? I'd love to post that on our social media. Maybe they say no, big deal. But I think it'd be another way to kind of make the message bigger outside of just like our team.
I think that's
Yeah,
a great idea.
it is.
Okay. Anything else? We'll come back to that at the end. Maybe we'll recap what short-term to-dos and things to just remember for the next time.
And then lastly, what I'd say really quickly is
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I thought Whole
Go
Foods
ahead.
was amazing. They were so supportive, even the staff next to us, where
Mm-hmm.
they would like, here, take a snack. You guys want some water? And oh, put your wrapper over at the green table, or do you know the green initiative in town? They would kind of partner with us. And so, and even inviting us to the store when they closed up early, like I think there's such a great relationship there. I think the manager is just so into this community partnership and relationship. So I think we could
Mm.
really build on that. The fact that they're letting us display that thing in their store. And I've never asked him something that he said no to. So I think there may be something we can enhance there too.
I think that's really important that this is a business that's willing to help us get our message to our community in a way that, uses their resources and allows us our cost is our volunteer time at this point. And we should thank them for that
Yeah,
publicly and see
that's
what
great.
else might happen at another time of the year, whether it's after the pumpkin season or some other, point in time.
Well, and
Um,
maybe it's a pumpkin drive where they're selling them and we're collecting them after.
Something, yeah. Lots of different ways people are doing that right now. Okay. We're going to skip the swap shop. I don't know that there really is any information of communication with external organizations. I don't really have anything to add other than the things that I would add relative to leaf blowers and EVs and food scraps. Does anybody have any reports on meetings with other groups or updates on other activities in town?
I do have one, Kathy.
Great.
And it kind of reinforces what Cliff said earlier about speaking to groups of people. So I was approached by um, the owner of Haven in Darien. Do you know that Haven? Who asked, they have a monthly members breakfast, and she asked me, I know the owner, and she asked me to come in and talk for just 5 or 7 minutes on what's going on in town. So I just talked about how we had been awarded the sustainable silver award from Sustainable CT, and I had put together a little 12 slide PowerPoint to show the different things that we recycle and pictures from it. And I did talk a lot about the food scrap program and explained why I was most interested in that, because it is kind of the low hanging fruit to pull the most out of the waste stream. And so I would say there were probably anywhere from 30 to 40 people there, and some of the people were taking pictures of the slides that I was presenting, and I did have the same kind of stats that I just presented earlier in this meeting. And quite a few people came up to me afterwards and asked me more questions about it. So Cliff, you absolutely are right that for 7 minutes of talking, I did get a lot more interest from people and questions and so forth. But we're not always presented with these nice options to address groups of people. And I guess, maybe it's incumbent upon us to maybe try to go out and find these opportunities. I mean, like I said, this one kind of fell into my lap, but, maybe we should be trying to, find more opportunities to talk to groups like this, because most people the majority of people seem to be interested. And maybe this group, because Haven tends to promote sustainability in general. So maybe it was kind of, a more of a welcoming group, but, we should be trying to find more of those groups, I guess.
What is Haven?
So Haven is it's like a membership, it's a workspace, and it's in Darien, and it allows people to go in and they rent space to work in, but they also have a ton of programming. So, I mean, I can send you their link so you can kind of take a look at their website, but it was a good experience.
Carolyn, would the folks would the owner of Haven, I think I know who you are referring to, be willing to send out through you to the people who attended, or give you the names or emails of the people who attended, just a thank you note, maybe with a particular slide or picture, or willingness to answer more questions, talk to their groups, if they're local business people and they're people who believe in a lot of networking and sharing of ideas. I'm just wondering if we could have not another meeting, but a follow-up to.
I can ask if there's some way to kind of follow up with some of the attendees.
Or write something to her that asks her to share it with the people who attended, whatever would be her method of operation. I don't know. I'm just thinking if this keeps going to reminding people and
Mm-hmm.
offering to do that for any organizations that they have. If they were listening and they liked it, maybe someone would say, yes, my newcomers group, my gardens group, my neighborhood group, my whatever it might be, my Girl Scout
Right.
troop, whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
it's a good idea. I did, I always give out my email and, the general recycle at darionct.gov email. And one person did follow up and ask for information on the food scrap
Yeah.
program, which I sent. So, yeah.
Just trying to build out like on a spider web. Not that you didn't do,
Yes.
and not that wasn't critical of you. That was just might someone, if reminded, know
And like,
another group of people.
Carolyn, do you have a pack and play now? Meaning, do
Do
you
I have a
have a
what?
like a pack and play or a play and plug where you have a presentation where we could go to Tokenique and ask them if we could do it at one of their morning coffees, or we could go over to the nature center and offer it as part of their fall programming, or do you have like
Yeah,
a
we,
pack and
we pretty
play
much do.
presentation?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much do. I mean, it actually started with an invitation from Cliff to me to give a presentation to the men's dairy and men's group in, I think it was February 2020. And I've just been, because it had statistics and everything in it about recycling, I've been updating that pretty regularly. So it is updated as of July 2023, showing like how many tons of textiles, how many tons of single stream recycling, over the course of the last, either since we've been collecting it or in the case of something like single stream, the last like 5 years. So yeah, I would say we kind of do have something that could be used like that.
We also gave the presentation in the library, which stole from Carolyn and
Yeah,
added
it's got a
some
lot
other
of those
stuff.
same
It's
slides.
the same PowerPoint slides that anyone could edit to their own audience or personal preference.
Right. Well, that's just it, right? If we had something where if I got into Tokenique, where could I pull my content from so we all have the same message wherever we're going? There's a clean look to it all and a clean message, but we can cater a little bit to who our audience is.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. This is basically what I have is the recycling center and the statistics related to that, and then depending on the group that you're talking to, you tailor it a little bit. So you might want to throw in a different slide or two or take a few out or whatever. But I do have a pretty substantial build on to what I presented to the men's group in February 2020 that has updated statistics and so forth.
Maybe it's time to go back to the men's group now that it's 2023 as another possibility. And since so much has changed since then. Carolyn, thank you for giving a presentation at Haven. That's fantastic. I would like to move to another. Is there anything else in communication at this point? Or move to the focus areas and specifically talk for a little bit about the EV work that Mohan and Tony have been working on and the leaf blower ordinance to see if there's information to share with the town, the selectmen, anyone watching this call. I think so Tony, if we go to 7E, which was EV fleets, infrastructure funding, update from Mohan gave to me. I thought you were still out of the country. And Mohan had sent me a quick email, and I'll read that. And then Tony, if you would like to elaborate on any of the stuff. And what we're talking about is developing at least a beginning of an understanding of an ability to install the EV charging infrastructure. And that obviously has all kinds of components of the costs and where and who gets to use it. And Tony and Mohan have been sort of seeking out guidance. So Mohan said you had contact with New Canaan Public Works, that you had follow-up conversations with an EV company about locations, where we could put them. And then there's we will need out-of-pocket funds after state rebates. We need to explore funding avenues. One option is to request unused funds this year. If that's not an option, we should have it budgeted in next year, which I believe is already budgeted. So given that there's lots of research going on, and then figuring out how to pay for it would be a step in that process. I'll turn this over to Tony and let you share with us anything that you've learned or anything you need this committee to do, or if you've already finished it because you've been back from vacation for 2 days.
I definitely haven't finished it. So
I was being facetious.
I didn't get a chance to reach out to New Canaan before I left, so I'm doing that in the next couple of days because Mohan had reached out a little bit and found that they had put some additional sites up, and so we just want to talk to them, just to understand what process they used and what costs they incurred, just to get an idea. So it seems like it's taken a while, but we've been doing something. Every couple of weeks we're getting something done. We've met with a couple different people that install EV stations, and Mohan met with the meeting I couldn't make with the company that does software for these stations. ChargePoint, if you've seen chargers out there in the public, ChargePoint's a kind of leading company in running the software, the networking software. So that is where we stand. It's kind of like it's not a fast process, but we're step by step progress, gathering information and kind of fine tuning what our first target's going to be. There's not any. We have not budgeted for this yet.
Right.
So there might be there's money for a car for the building department that we've just talked about, not finalized anything. That would be a good candidate for an EV vehicle because it's just an inspection car around town. Doesn't need to plow. It doesn't need to do any heavy duty work like we do at Public Works. 50, 75 miles a day tops. So that's where we stand with EV. And next time we meet, we'll be another step down the road, So that's where we stand there. In terms of the leaf blowers, Mohan and I talked a little bit about that. I gave him a few of my thoughts, some minor tweaks, but I'm gonna let him talk to you about those since I'm not a member of the committee. I'm just here to help out, with anything you guys need. So I think that's it. Unless you got any questions. So,
Tony, I do have some follow up in that I was on the Sustainable Fairfield County meeting yesterday, and there's a gentleman in Ridgefield who's actively involved with their EV fleet development, and also is actively involved with a moderation of blowers effort in Ridgefield. So we'll hold that off for a minute. But he was talking from the point of view that his police force was interested and ready to go, but we're waiting for revised models of cars that were crash rated and all those kinds of things. So,
right.
And in the context of that conversation, I said, well, when we're at the place where we're trying to figure out how to install our first, charging station and who gets to use it. And this gentleman was very involved. So I may put you and Mohan in touch with Vince for an email or a conversation, because I think he maybe like New Canaan is a little bit farther down. He also talked about the fact that they didn't end up having any costs for their infrastructure installment. I'm hearing we probably will. So, you never know if there's any work, any connection that Ridgefield could share. Because I think what's happening now is everybody's putting their feet in the water and everybody's having a different experience. Oh, Tony's on the phone. Okay. the leaf blower situation.
Sorry
Before we
about
go
that.
to leaf,
I had to pick up that
Before we get to leaf blowers. Okay, so Tony, I'm probably going to put you in touch with a gentleman that seems to have recent experience in the infrastructure piece, and they're kind of ready to go on the car piece, but not yet. So he
Yep.
may be a person you and or Mohan could speak to when
Yep.
you're talking to New Canaan, because
I appreciate that. Yep.
Um,
And then if you
we
raise
also
your hand
talked
in a second.
about lines of credit that they had access to from Eversource over and above the grant funding, which was interest-free money over a 5-year period
Right.
of time to finish projects. So, again, that may not apply to us, but it was they've moved. To the
Kathy?
I'm gonna yes.
excuse me. My recollection is that we were trying to get to the bottom of what our objectives are as a town. And
Yes.
I'm wondering if anything has happened in that regard.
So yes, more to the case of, so Mohan's organizing a lot of this. He's putting a little slideshow together. It's more like, here's some options. And so with the idea of presenting that to, maybe Monica and the town administrator, Kate. We're putting options together, like we could have EV just for the town vehicles that are electric vehicles, or we could have it for public access. So we're just throwing together different options of what we could potentially do, and then we'll get their input on that.
Are you near ready to solicit that input?
I wouldn't say near. I would say approaching. But we're making steady progress. So I don't quite know how to quantify it, but I don't think we're on the final stretch. Maybe on the final turn to look at the final stretch, if we were in a horse race.
Tony, did New Canaan, who had approved the installation of 2 charging stations at their town hall, did they ever get those installed? And if so, are those available for the public to use, or is that for municipal use only?
So apparently they have 4 now. I spoke to someone in New Canaan maybe a year ago when they had the 2, and they are not available. They're just for the town vehicles. They're not for.
Okay.
I think they do have one public one in a parking lot somewhere. But so that's and what Mohan and I are kind of talking is let's set these 2 options up. But why do we have we don't have gas stations for people? And is it really a need? If I live in Darien and if I have an electric car, I probably have an electric charger at my home. Do I really need one at the at town hall, or do I really need one at the ballpark? So these are the questions we're trying to answer, or at least trying to present to in a slideshow, saying here's an option. We're not sure the utility of it. Here's another option. The utility of it is for town vehicles. That's kind of simple. It's the public utility is the real question. What utility is there in having public charging stations? I guess it's promotion for having an electric vehicle, but chances are, if I have an electric vehicle, I'm not buying it because there's something at town hall or the park. And chances are, if I have an electric vehicle, I have a way to charge it, and I'm not relying on it. So these are just some of the questions we're throwing around.
Yeah, I think a lot of towns have looked at the. Sorry, Amanda. A lot of towns are grappling with those same things and may have some insights.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah.
The other thing I just throw out is I agree 100%. Like if you live in Darien, you probably have one at home. Though with our community changing so much and bringing so much more business in, maybe somebody who works in town would use that because they're going to drive back to Wilton and their car is at whatever. And so like it could make sense more from our business community than our our homeowners.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
And
Yep.
I think for employees, and I have attended a couple of things, and one of the Eversource meetings in particular, that when I first was looking at this, and we had the first call with Mohan and Tony, is that from a workforce development standpoint, how you plan for this over a period of the next few years. The state has started with new schools will have to have X percentage chargers, and at some point that may apply in a workforce, whether that would be private companies or public, cities or towns. I don't know. So it would seem like where you start and where you end up may be two different places, right?
Yeah. I think it kind of begs the question, why is it the town's responsibility to charge your car, to give you to provide a car charger? I'm not taking one side or another. I'm just saying that question will be asked. You know what I mean? It was why
And what I would say to that is it's not the town's responsibility, but it's an offering that our town, and we have a reputation as not being an offering town. And so anytime we can put out there a give, and I have no idea, maybe it's super expensive to offer it, but if
not
it's
that
kind
bad.
of the same, whether it's public or private, then why not be an offerer, right, to the bigger
Yeah.
community? And back to what I think Carolyn said of, I'd period the sentence there, but it also does offer a promotional piece of this is something we offer as part of our green plan.
Yeah. And I agree. When I ask these questions, it's sometimes what we're doing is we're taking the side of, what if I was against this and I asked the sustainability committee this question? So I want to make it clear, I'm asking these questions just to think
You're
about.
flushing it out, right?
Yeah.
Which we have to. And I think the part of flushing it out would be, and if we can provide them now and there's funding available that will dry up in X months or years, and we may end up needing it. That's where I say where you need to be in tomorrow and where you need to be 3 years from now. Like, what's the wisest way to invest the town's money to do something that you're probably going to get to anyway? So, and I think we're probably all in agreement that as a committee, we would advise the town begin to understand that infrastructure and have the ability to purchase those vehicles as part of our own fleet. Then you might say to support our employees, and then we might say to anybody that's driving into the community in a public parking lot or is coming to town hall for something. So, I think we could realistically come up with justification or priorities.
Right.
And then how you fill those, to me, comes back to how much of this grant money how much the grant money would help if we do it now versus do it later,
Right.
and we don't yet know what those costs are. But if 70% of the cost can be done by grants now, but 0% 2 years from now, what's the why? And I don't think we have the questions answered, but those are the ones that I think.
Yeah.
Do we
Cliff,
have a sense at
Would
all
matter.
from like Whole Foods how much people use? Because they've got several there, and they seem.
Oh.
I'd just be curious. And then Tony, how much is one of those to put in? Do you know?
well, it all depends on location, like your proximity to the power, so one like town hall, we got a quote, I forget what it was, but it was, let's say after the funding, under 30,000 or right around there, or maybe even under there. I forget off the top of my head, but it wasn't 70,000. You know what I mean? And it wasn't 10,000. So it was, but it wasn't a crazy number by any stretch.
There are probably grants available as well.
And those were after a couple of the grants.
After.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
a lot of the work is the digging, right? The getting digging. It's the construction work. It's not the charger itself. It's the.
Yep. And then, so when you go to different locations that have that are more distant from a power source, that price is going to go up. And there, we've looked at other sources for those locations, solar, these big stations that are 100% solar, that charge batteries. And I met with a team that does that they look really promising for the not so easy locations. So we got a few different things that we've been looking at and that we're going to propose. Cliff, you asked a question, so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts. I'm interested.
I love the questions you've asked. I love this conversation. I think it's really helped me to focus on some key aspects of this. And I do think that the town should be a leader in making sure its own fleet gets electrified. I hope that will be an objective and an early objective. And the question about, should the town be providing gas stations? I mean, that's a good one. And Amanda, your point about businesses, wanting to be supported. But what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me a little bit here, is how this works from an economics point of view. When somebody plugs in at Whole Foods, for example, do they pay for that? Presumably they pay somebody for it. And if businesses want these things, to be in their parking lots, is this going to be a moneymaker for them? Is it going to be like an ATM or something? Or is this going to be some sort of a loss leader?
It's a loss leader. So that software company that we met with, ChargePoint, that's exactly what we asked them. And it's, you're getting a little back, but you're not going to, there's no return on investment that's even, remotely, it's just, you're just generating a little bit of revenue, but you're not going to make up your costs until the unit's probably past its life cycle. So
well, that makes me wonder how this country is going to move to electric vehicles. If who's going to put in these stations if they don't pay for themselves?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of government subsidy for these right now. So, and new technology happens, and I think that's what
they'll get cheaper. Hopefully, they'll hopefully get cheaper.
Yeah, and right now that's the trajectory. It's just a question of when that flattens out.
Yeah, and that also goes to the more the demand is, the more the production increases. I mean, there's all kinds of components of that, as well as improvements in technology, just scale. So I'm really pleased with the conversation. Just that that Tony, you and with working with Mohan, that seems very comfortable talking in this space, are gathering information for our town in a way that we could have a constructive conversation with the selectmen or the RTM or the other advisory committees. And yes, there are many. It's not up to us at this point to say you need to do it for this person or not this person. I think we would wholeheartedly say we need to learn. We need to spend the least money we can if there's money on the table.
Yeah.
And get our town talking about it. So I think this is a fabulous conversation today. I really appreciate the work.
I just found this quote from the company that we've been talking to. It's only $14,000 to put in a dual, one station with two heads. So again, we're not talking about crazy money, but we don't want to put the station up before we have something to plug into,
Right.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So we will continue this conversation. So a follow up with what you and Mohan are doing. I am going to connect you with the gentleman, Vince in Ridgefield. Just I'll send him a couple of questions. He can answer them, and you can see if there's any reason to connect.
Great.
Via email or on the phone or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of end on the leaf blowers. We have only about 6 minutes, but and I want to preface this for anyone in the community. Many of the towns surrounding Darien have been looking at the problem of gas leaf blowers and the noise they create at all hours of the day or night. And different communities are looking at that as an issue, and they're looking at it as either a noise issue, they're looking at it as a health issue, they're looking at it as a carbon emissions issue. There are many different elements to the question of why do we have gas leaf blowers going all day, every day, much of the year. There's also an environmental issue with the blowing of the land that leaf blowers have and the effect on pollinators and insects and things like that. So there are many, many ways to look at that problem. And we were asked a few months ago to start thinking about it. Bill Cavers had written an article 2 years ago. Cliff had done a little work on health. We asked Mohan to gather a few stats on 2-stroke, 4-stroke motors, and I've collected sort of everything I could on what's happening in surrounding communities. And without going through the details or making a presentation, I will tell you that Westport has instigated a moderation plan, which limits the time that leaf blowers can be used during the year. Norwalk is working on a ban, an outright ban to go in effect in 2027. And the way it was passed was that if the technology and the financing don't make sense in 2026, the ban could be rescinded or extended. Ridgefield is working on what it calls moderation. And if we can end the meeting with me showing you the screen, if I can figure out how to do this, they have built a website. So I want to share my screen. And I want to go to Ridgefield limiting gas. Okay, I think I can get it. Aha, do you all see that?
Yes, you did it.
Okay.
Good job.
Yay! I am so tech old. Ridgefield has a campaign going, community appeal for leaf blower moderation. The same gentleman that's doing the work with the EV infrastructure is involved in this project and is part of Sustainable Ridgefield. And they have built an entire website. I'm just not going to let you all read it, to go through looking at what the impact of gas leaf blowers are and what the options are. So you can read through the entire website on your own, but they answer why act on this, and they go through health issues, they go through noise issues, and they give a lot of statistics. What Mohan and Cliff have done is duplicated here, and in some ways they've presented it in a I would say a more user friendly manner, from looking at healthier lives and studies and quieter neighborhoods, and it goes on and on and on. They have talked about the education component of other sustainable options where you might not mow as often. You wouldn't need to leaf blow your lawn every week when the lawnmower goes across. So there's a whole section on that. And there's a fabulous set of FAQs. And
you can send us that link, Kathy, or can you tell us what
the link? It's just yes, okay. I'll send you the link, but it's ridgefieldcomm.org. That's their key. Yeah. And I can put it in the link before when we end the meeting. But they go through a whole series of answers on will cause hardships for our landscapers, and it goes through and answers. I think there are 6, 8, 9 questions below. So a lot of the work that we've done now, I just got access to this presentation yesterday. What I didn't have the time was to add in or check off the things that our folks had done in our work to see that it's all here. And you can read it yourself, but it's very factual. The way they're handling, I'm going to unshare. The way they are handling this is to they're using a town ordinance, like their town charter, to ask citizens to request a meeting to take a vote on this. So they're working through their town charter, gathering signatures. They're almost there. There will ultimately be a meeting, and then the town, I don't know through what body, would make decisions on this. And Vince's perspective in his community was moderation was a much more palatable place to think and work and talk than banning. And banning is almost impossible. And even in Norwalk's case, where they seem committed to doing it, they couldn't make that happen for a number of years. So I think with what we've done, what Ridgefield's done, with the data on the other communities, we could certainly have a conversation now. Monica said publicly at a first selectman meeting, other towns are doing this, maybe we should look into it. So I think we are at a point where if you all are okay, I would ask her to either, attend our next meeting or let us come and speak to her, or at least give her access to some of the information that we have gathered on why this is an issue in other communities and how they're approaching it. I don't have a necessary personal recommendation at the moment. I think we all need to read and educate ourselves, but I'd like to know what else, and Mohan's not here, anyone thinks would be the type of information we would communicate back, because Monica basically asked us, what do y'all know?
Yeah, I think before you meet with her, I would have a couple recommendations.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I don't think we should invite her to our meeting. I think we should send a couple recommendations.
Or if we invite her, have something ready for, saying this is what we recommend. One way or the other.
And I don't know what that is, and clearly we wouldn't do that today. We just barely have a quorum, but I think I will send you, I think the best thing to do is I will send a follow-up with the link to this presentation, and I was combining the work of Cliff, Mohan, and I into one document. So I think there is enough there that without having to go out and research on your own, you could read enough information about what the facts are about two-stroke motors, four-stroke motors, how much emissions are put out, what the status of the quality of equipment is for electric stuff, why many towns think you absolutely need it in the spring. What basically has happened in Richfield is they're going to propose that gas-powered leaf blowers are allowed to be used in 6 weeks in the spring, 6 weeks in the fall, and for all emergencies. That is what Bedford Hills and Westport have done. So they've banned them. They've restricted their usage to certain times of the year. Like I said, Norwalk is going in a different route to ban the whole usage. So there are different ways if you wish to cut back on noise. If you wish to, and Greenwich was looking at 1 per acre or something like that. So the whole issue is, does the town wish to provide a cleaner, quieter environment, and how would we recommend they go about doing that, given that gas-powered leaf blowers are noisy and they emit a tremendous amount into the atmosphere, of carbon into the atmosphere. The town will then have to decide whether it's important. Townspeople are asking the town to consider this, and I'm not ready personally to make a recommendation. Nor would I ask any of you to at this point, but would you all be comfortable digging into this data and coming back at our next meeting to say what we think we might recommend? Whether they implement it or not is a completely different matter.
Kathy, in the towns that have limitations on when gas-powered leaf blowers can be used, do they allow the use of electric blowers in the interim months? Okay.
Yes. And I think the theory is that over time, first off, like Home Depot
the companies will transition.
Home Depot has announced they will stop selling gas lawnmowers and leaf blowers in a period of time. So the residential market is going to ultimately move this way. People at home might start buying their own if they do their own. It's the landscaper that runs a business that argues that they don't have strong enough technology, and the cost to do it would be too high to fully eliminate their entire their entire stock of tools. So Norwalk's saying was by 2027 you have time, and the argument, one of the pushbacks saying that it's going to cost money to invest, but the estimates are that you spend like $7 to $8 an hour on a gas leaf blower. And so if you're running a gas leaf blower for 8 hours a day at $7 a day, you're spending $56 a day on gas per leaf blower. And if your crew has 4 of them, you're spending $200 a day on gas. And that you're going to buy batteries, but if you're costing out over time. And I haven't done all that math, but it is all described in these documents that we have now gathered to read ourselves before we come up with a position. Again, I'm not.
Maybe we should. This is just a suggestion again, because I'm just here.
Tony, your suggestions are very welcome.
Okay. maybe we should all just individually write down what we think might be reasonable, and then we'll put it all together. And if there's a common theme, maybe we can say, yeah, this kind of seems the direction we're going, and this guy's an outlier, and this guy's an outlier.
Yeah.
And one thing I would suggest is like the whole idea of what we're talking about, the technology of this equipment over time. That's a tough one because we don't know. We can't see the future.
No, we
It
cannot.
probably will get better, but Sunday no leaf blowers before 11 doesn't take any technology, and kind of addresses something pretty quickly, and I think
Absolutely.
wouldn't get a lot of kickback. Wouldn't be a lot of, hey, I really want to do it Sunday at 10 o'clock, but I will wait till 11.
Exactly. And in reading through.
How about none on Sunday, Tony? None
Yeah.
on Sunday.
No, because if I work Saturday, if I work Monday through Saturday, I need to cut my grass.
Got it. And,
Just an idea.
question-
You know what I mean? I'm not.
No,
Your idea.
we're not talking about lawnmowers and weed whackers. The ordinances are all specifically focused on the leaf blower itself and whether or not they need a leaf blower. So again, I'm going to distribute what we have gathered. That was, I think, in our June meeting, May or June meeting, we said we would begin to investigate the data. Cliff did some work. Mohan did some work. I did some work. Richfield has done a lot of work, and now I think if we all absorb that, next month we can either come up with a top 2 practical ideas, and we'll make a list of what those might be, and that would then ultimately lead to a recommendation. I think would be better.
Yeah, because I think we all have ideas, but none of us want to say, my idea is the best one, and that's what we should do.
You can email them, and prior to the next meeting, just a list of that we could share on the screen, everyone 1 or 2 top ideas, and we'll just present them as a list of possible talking points.
Yeah.
How would that be?
I think we should devote the whole next meeting to trying to formulate a recommendation and really target getting a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen in October.
Sounds good.
Do you guys know off cuff, and I know totally different issue, totally different, but I am just kind of curious, the water ordinance, like, aren't there certain days we can't run our hoses and stuff? Does anyone just know off cuff what that ordinance is?
That's not an ordinance. That's from the water company, and it's for 6 communities down in Lower Fairfield County, and it's just to try to, so like they don't run dry.
What's their thing? What is it? You can only do it every other day or odd
depending on the number of your house. You can do it on an odd or even day. It's if you go to aquarion.com, you'll be able to find it pretty easily. In fact, that's a Amanda,
I'm just more wondering.
I usually publicize that, so I'll do that. I'll do that again, and you'll see it. I'll tag you or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Part of this, of course, is part of this is I think needs to include the town and its leaf blowers and setting an example for the community. And I was going to ask, one of the things that somebody mentioned in passing was that you can reduce the amount of leaf blowing during the summer just by cutting your grass every other week instead of every week, which is something we do actually. Our landscaping company has agreed to come every other week for us.
Yeah, we do too.
Do the town lawns get mowed every week?
It's more as needed. So in the spring, it's every week. In the summer, when because most of the town lawns are not irrigated, so in the summer when stuff isn't growing, it's more like, hey, it's getting. We know in the spring and fall when we're getting rain. In the summer, it's more on a, hey, we're taking a look at that, but it's not necessarily every week. And I would mention just Cliff about the town stuff is your leaf blower, my chainsaw. It's all based on, I want my property to look beautiful. The town's equipment is for public safety. So if we don't have the most efficient stuff, if there's a storm, if we don't have sidewalks cleaned, it's a public safety issue. I think there is a slight difference between the two. I'm not saying that the town can't contribute to the electric mission. I'm just saying there's a difference between, our equipment is for public safety and to keep the sidewalks clean and a storm event to never be interrupted and get things cleaned up. So, again, I'm not saying there's not something we can contribute to the electric mission, but you got my message there.
Yeah.
And I will even say, Tony, that Vince in Ridgefield said the plan they're putting in effect obviously includes, and this would be for everybody, not just the town, the use of this stuff during emergencies. There are times in which and I think, and I don't even know exactly what Darian's rule is, and then we're over time, so we will hopefully end on this. Ridgefield's right now, you can use a gas-powered leaf blower between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. 365 days a year in Ridgefield. And they're looking for, based on their website, a period of calm. And their town's recommendation is 6 weeks in the spring, 6 weeks in the fall in emergencies. And that may not be Darianne's recommendation. Norwalk's is an all right ban. And I think Tony's right. Our goal next meeting is provide to me in via email any of the ideas you think are most meaningful or relevant or easy to implement or not controversial or whatever measures you think would make. So we'll come up with a list and then we'll start saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, prioritizing them 1 to 10, and then we could have a more meaningful conversation with the town leaders on what the health risks are, what the carbon risks are, what the noise is, and here are the different approaches to begin to address some of these. How's that?
Great.
Thank you very much, everybody. Hot August day. We got a quorum and appreciate the time. Enjoy the end of the summer, and we will see you sometime around September 12th, I think. I don't know where. I'll say the name. September 13th is our next meeting.
Great.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank
nice
you.
to see you.
Great day.